Well, hello everybody. It looks like we are about to begin our live program here at theonering.net. My name is Clifford Broadway. Hello everybody. I've just pulled up a song. It's Bilbo's last song that I've just pulled up because today an appropriate time has come to acknowledge Sir Ian Holm and the passing of Sir Ian Holm is the subject of our conversation today. And I'm really glad to have everyone here live. I've been gone for quite a long time, as I also had to deal with a death in the family. And as many of you folks know who have followed me here and there online, as I've been a writer and a contributor to the onering.net for 20 years, I've never had to think about, what it would be like to say goodbye to someone dearly beloved. At the same time, we as a fandom, as a community around the world, are saying goodbye to our very own Bilbo Baggins. For we have lost. It's been quite a difficult year for Tolkien fans. Here at the onering.net, I have to say we bring all the news and all the speculation and all the conversations that we can bring about the world of and the fictional worlds of J.R.R. Tolkien and the state of the fandom and the energy that we all share and experience being fans of Tolkien's amazing literary legacy and the remarkable cinematic legacy that Peter Jackson has bestowed upon us in our time. And we share all of these things as a community of people. It is good to remind ourselves at times like this that we are a real community. Unlike other fandoms, Harry Potter fandom, which has gone through some seismic disruption recently in the past week or two, the Star Wars fandom, which has been polarized and split by their experiences with the Rian Johnson film versus the J.J. Abrams films versus George Lucas's films. And as a fandom, we've never had that problem. The Ringers community that I've made this film about, this feature film, the people that I've experienced as I've traveled the world for 20 years as a writer and a contributor for the onering.net, as an interviewer, as a person completely absorbed in Tolkien's legendarium, in his life, in his stories. I have met and I have experienced, I have embraced in my life, I have embraced a community of people who have been so supportive and so enlightened and so energized and so creative. And so I want to say thank you. At the beginning of this show, here at the beginning, we're going to talk about the end of all things. We're going to talk about the themes of the Lord of the Rings, as Professor Tolkien wrote, that they're about death and the pursuit of deathlessness. Literally, Tolkien gave us this 1,200-page magnum opus of the Lord of the Rings and the story of the War of the Ring, and the end of the Third Age, and the struggles of Frodo and Sam and the Fellowship, struggling with the legacy of that ring that Bilbo had accidentally found on his adventures. And at the end of it all, we realize at the end of the story that Tolkien really is leading us into a meditation on death and the pursuit of deathlessness, especially in regards to the elves and the three rings of elven power that were used to delay the passage of time, to delay the inevitable leaving, the exodus of the Noldor, the elven people from Middle-earth, to leave and go to Valinor, to their spiritual destiny, to the uttermost west. And they wouldn't leave. They wouldn't leave Middle-earth. They lingered. They lingered in Middle-earth for so long, using the powers of the ring in Rivendell and Lothlorien to extend life, to extend this time that is passing, to slow it down, which is why Peter Jackson moves everything into a different frame rate in Lothlorien. As soon as we arrive in the movie, after the death of Gandalf, and as soon as they leave the slopes outside of the Dimrill Dale, outside of the east gate of Moria, as soon as they go east down to Lothlorien and they arrive on the edges of the forest, before Haldir shows up in the extended edition, you'll notice that everything slows down. And Peter Jackson is very, very much visually aware of Tolkien's literary theme of the pursuit of deathlessness and the way that Galadriel is using the ring, Vilya. Excuse me, it's Nenya. Nenya is the ring that Galadriel has to slow down time. So everything that you experience visually is in slow motion in Lothlorien until they get in the boats and leave. And then it goes back to a normal frame rate. And it's just exactly the way Tolkien described it, the way that Peter shows us, the way that Ian Holm, as a performer, as Bilbo, is very, very much aware of his performance as Bilbo, is also inextricably tied to the overall theme of death and the pursuit of deathlessness. As I say it again, and remind you all that those are Tolkien's own words, as the way Tolkien himself described his thematic interest in The Lord of the Rings. And there it is, written large through the film and written small throughout the films in personal details, especially at the Grey Havens, in the scenes where Frodo writes his last notes in the Red Book of Westmarch. And Ian Holm has provided us with a performance that is so complete and so thorough that we understand Bilbo's personal truth as a character as strongly as we understand Frodo's emotional devastation and his truth in the Grey Havens, and why it was so important to keep the film going and tell the story all the way to the very end. Despite all the criticisms, all the many, many jokes that were made at Peter Jackson's expense, and all the critics in The Hollywood Reporter and Daily Variety, and all the newspapers, and in Rolling Stone, when everybody complained about The Return of the King having 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 extra endings, and it didn't need to have too many endings. And I mean, Peter was lambasted with all those jokes over and over again about how unnecessary it was to end the movie and then suddenly fade to white, fade back in. There's another ending, and then there's a coronation, and then there's another ending, and then there's people walking back into the Shire, and then there's another ending, and then, God bless it, they're taking us to another ending at the Grey Havens, and you have to set aside all that bullshit and all those complaints of complete nonsense because they're so essential to the way that Tolkien wrote the book, the way that the movie is presented, that Bilbo again becomes the focus of the story. Just as Bilbo was the focus of the story 6 films prior, or 4 books prior, it comes back to him. Because Bilbo was always the everyman. He was always our entry point into this world. For those Tolkien fans who have read all the books, if you're reading only The Lord of the Rings, and you never read The Hobbit, then you would be permitted to think that Sam Samwise was your everyman as a character to become an entry point into the story. But it all comes back to Ian Holm and his performance as Bilbo. And there's some kind of just, I consider it this well rounded cinematic perfection that Ian Holm had such a career. We're going to get into that now and talk about his amazing career. And we're going to show clips from his career and all the movies that he did. And we're going to talk about his stagecraft, his work with the Royal Shakespeare Company. But I want everyone to remember as we talk about, what it means to say farewell to people, that Professor Tolkien was also saying farewell to Middle Earth in a way that was very personal to him. And there is the poem, the very famous poem, Bilbo's Last Song, which is a meditation on death that Bilbo is having near the end of his life. And I want us all to think about the thematic cohesion that the professor and that upstart Kiwi director down in New Zealand, they all brought us a little bit of perfection, thematically speaking, that I'll never forget. And it really is centered around Bilbo. Ian Holm and his life and his career as an actor set the Royal Shakespeare Company on its ears, set everything into a wild new mode of vitality and dynamism on stage. It is best said by the great director, artistic director of the RCS, the Royal Shakespeare Company, the famous stage director Trevor Nunn. He said it best, ladies and gentlemen. And so, welcome to the OneRing.net. Again, for all of those of you who are here and just tuning in right now, we are meditating on Ian Holm and his amazing career and all the great things that he accomplished. And we're keeping ourselves very, very much aware of what Ian brought to every role, what he brought to every performance was a unique vitality. It's like, you look at Heath Ledger, who has also passed away, and you look at his performances and you equally say, in every single time he brought a character to life, that is an incredible habitation of a character in such a way that it's just amazing. And I'm going to read to you something that was published in The Guardian. In The Guardian, when Ian Holm passed away. And we're going to talk about Ian's experiences in the theater. And then our producer behind the scenes, Justin, is going to show us a clip from The War of the Roses, literally a clip from Richard III. We're going to get right to that clip in just a minute. But let me share these thoughts with you. The actor, Ian Holm, who has died June 19th, 2020, at age 88, convinced theater audiences who were accustomed to the cinema, screen versions of Shakespeare, that his characters were indeed alive. In the words of Trevor Nunn, as television news tributes have said, Ian Holm is best known for his performances in the films Chariots of Fire and Lord of the Rings. But to me, the name Ian Holm stands for something altogether different. For me, he is the genius who invented contemporary Shakespeare acting. As the close-up naturalism of film and television became the staple expression in the 1960s, and he's talking about Franco Zeffirelli's famous Romeo and Juliet. And everyone knows Franco Zeffirelli's late 60s and early 70s adaptations of Shakespeare. And that was indeed about close up naturalism. That's true. As the close up naturalism of film and television became the staple expression in the 1960s, the danger was that Shakespeare stage performance would be increasingly seen as rhetorical, bombastic, external, and in the pejorative sense, theatrical, too theatrical. Emerging into prominence in the early work of the Royal Shakespeare Company, he played Prince Hal in the two parts of Henry IV, and then in the greatest challenge of his career to that point, Henry V. Ian Holm playing Henry V. The post-war definitive Henry had been filmed and played by Laurence Olivier in a production that proclaimed the play to be the national anthem in 5 acts. Olivier's vocal range and pyrotechnics were thrilling, yes, but essentially the performance was a recitation of a famous verse text. Unforgettably, Ian Holm's Henry, youthful, out of his depth, full of self-doubt, transformed the famous text into something that we had never heard and never experienced before. He was able to convince us that what he was saying was the spontaneous expression of his thoughts in language that was summoned up from within him. There was no hint of recitation, no hint that anything he was saying had ever been written down before. He was as real as filmic close-up naturalism could ever be. I was witness to this revelation as assistant and finally co-director of that production. Ian Holm transformed the role. He transformed Shakespeare acting. He transformed the acting of the company around him. He transformed the English theater for decades, as only an actor of genius could. May his influence never wane. Short and to the point. And now, let's see if Justin can show us this clip from Richard III. Okay, it doesn't seem like it's playing back. Our apologies. If it's not playing back, we will try to get it to come back a little bit later. I appreciate Justin working behind the scenes. Yes, Ian Holm had a career that was just amazing, and all the feature films that he's done may surprise you. They may actually surprise you. But if Justin gets the clip from Richard III to play, then we'll play that for you. But if we don't, let's look at this. Ian Holm filmography. I just pulled this up. I mean, this is a lot. This is a lot. Many of these movies and things you folks might not even remember that you ever saw him in it. Way back in the 1970s, he was in a movie called Shout at the Devil. Simon Magus, The Last of the Blonde Bombshells with Judi Dench. That's hilarious. Oh, and in 1969, Oh, What a Lovely War. He was in a very interesting film adaptation. Jeremy Irons starred in a film adaptation of Franz Kafka, The Metamorphosis. And the movie was called Kafka. Ian Holm was in that, and he was particularly close with the people at Monty Python's Flying Circus. And Ian Holm starred in some wonderful roles in Terry Gilliam's movies Time Bandits and his most famous or infamous film, Brazil. And really loved Brazil. And I love Terry Gilliam movies. He's fantastic. In Big Night, which is one of the greatest culinary movies ever made about the ultimate Italian dinner, the ultimate dinner that was ever served. And some people will argue and say, oh, no, that would be Babette's Feast. Or maybe The Cook, the Thief, his wife and her lover. But some people just, want to talk about their favorite cooking shows. You can scratch all that. Find yourselves a copy of Big Night. Okay? Stanley Tucci, Ian Holm, a great cast of zany characters, and one of the funniest performances from Ian Holm in his career. He's fantastic. I recommend Big Night. Yes, yeah, we're going to talk about Alien. And hello, I'm saying hello to Sean and all the people in the chat. Justin is going to try to bring back one of these video clips if he can get it to play back properly. And I'll just shut up and watch the clip if it works. Ian Holm played so many amazing roles. And as the role of Napoleon Bonaparte, he appeared twice in two separate movies. One as a serious romantic version of Napoleon, and he was in the entire film in this amazing costume drama as, the great French general and warmonger. And then years later, in the comedy, the comedy to end all time travel comedies, in Time Bandits, there's a small sequence where Ian Holm reprises the role of Napoleon, and it's played very broadly and very crazy. It's very crazy and funny, and he's on screen for just a little while in a short segment. But that movie is wild. Time Bandits is great. It's got, believe it or not, it's got Sean Connery as the Greek ancient King Agamemnon. And at that point in time, nobody knew that Sean Connery was going to get the first offer to play Gandalf. So that means that Time Bandits is the movie that technically contains our first Bilbo and our first Gandalf, which was Sean Connery and Ian Holm. So for all you fantasy fans out there that love Terry Gilliam and his works, bam, mic drop. Get yourself a copy of Time Bandits. It is so weird and funny and satisfying and loopy and just, it's fun. It's great fun. Ian Holm played Napoleon twice. I wanted to show you one of the clips from Time Bandits, but I don't know if Justin can do the technical jiggery pokery to make it work. But I also recommend, and I'm going back to the late 80s, and we're going to go back to Alien, which was released in the 70s. But all you youngins, all of you, I'm Gen X, I'm Generation X, thank you. But all of you Generation Zs and millennials and post millennials, all of you folks have got to dig into the old film catalog. Go back to the old film catalog that Ian Holm did. Get yourself a copy of Ridley Scott's Alien. Get yourself a copy of Time Bandits. And um, I wouldn't bother with Chariots of Fire because it's boring. It is a boring, boring, boring movie. But, that's just me. I'm the one who has a great amount of patience for 3 hour and a half Peter Jackson movies, 3 hours and 42 minutes, whatever. But I don't have any patience for Out of Africa, snooze fest. Out of Africa, boring. The English Patient. Wake me up when it's over. Anyways, let's play the clip. This is the clip from Time Bandits. If you didn't hear the video, if you didn't hear the audio, it's the joke is bring back the puppets. He says he wants to watch a Punch and Judy show. Bring back the puppets. That's what I like. I like to see little things killing each other. So Napoleon making a joke about little things killing each other. That's the kind of humor you get in a Terry Gilliam movie. Um, he also played a bureaucrat running the crazy system in Brazil, another Terry Gilliam masterpiece. And going back to Alien, I would love it if Justin can show the clip from Alien because it is one of the most disgusting, gross out, gross things in the history of gross. It is so disgusting, but it's brilliant. Play it. Oh, there's no sound. No sound. That's too bad. Sorry about there's no sound on those clips, but um, I will have to say that people in the live chat on YouTube are saying, "What is that? What is that? I don't want to go back and watch that movie, but what is that?" And I'm like, well, he's an android, and Harry Potter fans will also remember that the late, great John Hurt, yeah, that's right, Ollivander. Ollivander stars in the original Alien opposite Ian Holm, and also Sigourney Weaver is just fantastic. it's worth going back in time to look at the catalog of Ian Holm's previous films because they're just fantastic. Alien is a fantastic, fantastic experience in horror, science fiction and horror. And it was like nothing audiences had seen, and it really took over the world of cinema at the time when it came out. Um, Ian Holm also played not just costume dramas like in Napoleon Bonaparte, and he played the head of a gangster family in Big Night. Again, my favorite. It's the most legendary meal dinner movie of a great big dinner being served. But he was also a voice actor, and Ian Holm was in one of the most famous um, Pixar movies, written and directed by Brad Bird. Oh, good. We have this clip. Here it is. I love this. We have the clip from Big Night. Oh, I love this movie. There is. Ian brought such a special quality to these roles that he played. It's fantastic. I know you guys can't hear that clip, but uh, sometimes you have to remember that he was a very versatile actor. He didn't always play a lovable, hug-worthy, snuggly hobbit. He wasn't always the friendliest little Bilbo Baggins who would invite you over. Sometimes he was a criminal gangster who would, hire a hit on you. Or sometimes, like in the movie From Hell, he played the notorious Jack the Ripper, who was slicing women and victimizing people in London in the dark, foggy streets. And he's played a lot of different roles that were not all cute and cuddly, that's for sure. And most importantly, he had experience with the world of the Lord of the Rings, but not as Bilbo. Oh, here he is. Here's the clip from Hell, where they use that famous line of dialogue where he says, "Years from now, men will say that I am the one who started the 20th century." Yes, he's capable of playing quite the frightening villain. Um, I also wanted to bring up that for Jack the Ripper fans, um, that movie From Hell has its unique qualities that are very attractive, but because it's an adaptation of the graphic novel of Alan Moore's famous graphic novel, From Hell, but it also has its detractors because it's far from historically accurate, very, very far from historically accurate, although it claims to be, as, you know, ironically, it claims to be super, you know, uh, historically on point, but it's not. It's definitely worth checking out. Definitely worth seeing. Ian Holm is a right evil bastard. He's just so scary. So scary. Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Hey, Justin. Oh my God, don't show that part. It's all scary. Oh, it's gross. He's chopping people up. Yeah, see, after seeing that movie, you'll never think about Bilbo again the same way. So let's see if he can switch to the fifth element. There you go. And then this is a famous scene between, well, again, between Harry Potter star Gary Oldman, who played Sirius Black, Harry Potter's godfather and prisoner of Azkaban. So yeah, the overlap between these actors in the Tolkien universe and the Harry Potter universe is quite strong. Ian is great in this movie. He's so good. I know that I know that everybody in this audience remembers this movie. Everyone remembers this movie. Oops, you shouldn't have drank that. You shouldn't have drank that, Gary. Oh my God, Ian is so clever in this. He's so good in this part. It's hard, but Ian Holm is being upstaged by this little elephant alien creature. I know, it's crazy. Um, if you guys are fans of animation as much as I am, then you'll know that Brad Bird, who created the modern classic The Iron Giant and also The Incredibles, Brad Bird was also behind Ratatouille. And Ratatouille has some really great voice acting parts in it. Most notably, um, the last voice performance of Lawrence of Arabia himself, who plays the food critic. And there he is, the chef. The French chef. There he is, that angry little man who's running the kitchen. That was Ian Holm, and you didn't know it, did you? I had no idea. That's Ian Holm. He's fantastic. And one of Brad Bird's finest accomplishments. I love The Iron Giant and I love The Incredibles, but Ratatouille is something very special indeed. Oh my God, it is so good. Yep, ladies and gentlemen, Ian Holm for you in Ratatouille is so, so, so good. So Ian Holm, uh, doing all of these performances, and a lot of people didn't even know that it was him. Thank you, Justin, for that. Thank you. Um, in another Oscar-winning film that won Best Picture, believe it or not, Ian Holm has starred in The Return of the King and in Chariots of Fire, two Best Picture winning films. And in Chariots of Fire, he plays the coach of the young man who is running for the Olympic gold, the Olympic runner. And there's a scene. That's it. That's it, Justin. Play that scene. It doesn't require any dialogue at all. It's just the moment when United Kingdom wins the gold medal and the flag of Great Britain is raised up and they're playing the anthem of God Save the Queen. That's the part. And then there is Ian Holmes' reaction. And in the audio, in the background, you can hear God Save the Queen being played at the gold medal award ceremony. But watch, this is just great. Oh, he's he's just overwhelmed. Fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you, Justin, for showing that. That says it all, folks. That says it all. Ian Holm was a genius, and he could turn dusty, old Shakespeare into something living and magical. And he could turn total silence into magic in the same way. And that tells you something about the quality of him as a living artist, as a performer, in the living art of stagecraft and acting, which is one of the most unique arts of them all. And there are many, many arts in the world: painting and sculpture, poetry, performance, dance, lights, singing, animation. Out of all of the arts in the world, acting is the most ephemeral. It is the most mercurial, because when it's there in front of you, live in the audience, and then it's gone, it is gone into the ether, never to be experienced the same way again, never to be expressed in quite the same way again. It is so ephemeral, it is so unique, and Ian Holm was a master at his craft, at his life. And his experience as Frodo began for the BBC, and it's unfortunate that we can't play any audio for you because we don't have any audio playback today. But he played Frodo Baggins in the very, very famous BBC version that was developed and written by Tolkien historian and broadcaster Brian Sibley. And Brian Sibley, as you know, is the guy who wrote the official movie guides. He wrote the Lord of the Rings official movie guides, all three of them, and he wrote them for the Hobbit films. And he has written other Tolkien scholarship and been featured as a guest interview in my documentary film, talking about the past, 60 years of Tolkien fandom and popular culture. And Brian Sibley sat down with that radio adaptation of The Lord of the Rings, and he realized that what Ian Holm was doing was perfect. Perfect. Brian Sibley has the same is in the same place of genius and being acknowledged as Peter Jackson, because Peter Jackson also recognized this is the person that I need to cast. Way back when, for the radio adaptation, it was for Frodo. And then many years later, he got to play older Bilbo, and everything that Martin Freeman did, everything that Martin Freeman attempted to create in his wonderful performance, was Martin Freeman being very, very conscious of Ian Holm and bringing Ian Holm's energy to that work. It is a little known fact that in some of the extended scenes in The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, where Elijah Wood comes back and Frodo and older Bilbo are having conversations, talking around the house in Bag End. Well, all of those scenes in Bag End were filmed right there, as you see, in England on a separate stage that was built and constructed for Ian Holm, because Ian could not physically travel down to New Zealand. The other the interior shots with Ian Holm walking around with his back to the camera, that was actually Martin Freeman. That was Martin Freeman dressed in old Bilbo's costume, pretending to adapt the physical mannerisms and the walking behavior of Ian Holm. And that exterior wide shot where Elijah Wood is walking down the path and leaving and going down off to go and meet Gandalf in his fireworks cart later on, and you see Bilbo come out in put his arms up and stretch behind his head. He's like, that was not Ian Holm. That was Martin Freeman doing his level best to recreate what Ian Holm would have created out of reverence, out of extreme reverence, not just out of continuity concerns, not just to make it a continuity issue, but out of reverence. Reverence for what this incredible veteran of stage and screen had brought to the fore for Bilbo. So Martin Freeman wouldn't have done anything that he did without taking his keynote from Ian Holm. And Ian Holm's older Bilbo, who we see as younger Bilbo in Fellowship of the Ring, in that Fellowship of the Ring prelude, the prologue, I hope that is never ever replaced. A lot of people have asked on the chat. A lot of people have this in conversation privately, and they ask it sometimes. They ask it during our live program. Do you think they'll ever switch a shot and have Martin Freeman be in the opening of the Fellowship of the Ring to make it look right? And I say to that, no. No. Leave that shot of Ian Holm intact in the Fellowship of the Ring. And so we've come full circle to our conversation about death and the pursuit of deathlessness, as Professor Tolkien so thoughtfully and energetically created the secondary world and everything that happens at the end of the Third Age as his own personal commentary on deathlessness. But you see at the end of the story that Ian Holm comes back to the Shire before they all go to the Grey Havens. And with the dialogue that Frodo has, which is a very unusual moment of Frodo becoming the narrator, and that never happens. Everyone notices that right away. In Fellowship of the Ring, in its extended edition prologue, you get some narration by Bilbo as he's writing down his notes in the Red Book of Westmarch. But you never, ever, ever get Frodo as a narrator until 3 movies later, the very, very end. It's time for the Grey Havens, and because Frodo has taken the place of Bilbo as the author of writing down historical notes and stories in the Red Book, Peter Jackson correctly uses the narration device just the way that Bilbo was using it at the top of the Fellowship of the Ring, and brings it back to narrating, and Frodo is there. And when you listen to Frodo's dialogue, you are misled. The audience is being misled that the entire thing is being set up only for Bilbo's benefit, and that Frodo doesn't have any intention to leave at all. It's all a setup. It's a setup. I'm telling you because you know this. And for the audience who's never seen The Lord of the Rings, they won't know it until they get there. It's a setup. But it is thematically correct. It is absolutely correct that the movie, as the books, as thematically in Tolkien's mind, it comes back to Bilbo and Bilbo's last moment of grace. Why is Bilbo given a chance to pursue deathlessness? Again, back to this subject. But people metaphysically misunderstand. The idea of going to Valinor for Gandalf means going back to being an angelic being, a Maiar spirit who is immortal. That's not the same for Bilbo or Frodo. Eventually, Legolas and Gimli make the trip over to Valinor. But when Frodo goes to spend his eternal rest in Valinor, it's not eternal. It's not for an afterlife. It's just for a period of time for peace, for genuine healing, genuine peace. Bilbo and Frodo are both offered the chance to leave Middle-earth and to leave that physical realm of Middle-earth for a chance at peace, physical healing, before they would ultimately die a normal, natural, biological death. But at least it would be a time of rest and pure comfort, and the shadow of the war and the shadow of the ring and the presence of Sauron would be gone forever from Bilbo's heart and from Frodo's heart. And so that's what it's all about. And Professor Tolkien knew this every step of the way, right down to this poem, the poem that I'm going to read to you. It's called Bilbo's Last Song, and it's very, very personal for me because, as many of you know, my older brother passed away uh, in early April, and the family was not, because of COVID-19, the family was not able to go and gather for a funeral. We were not allowed to gather at all until June 19th. So there we were, getting all the family together to have a celebration of life for my older brother, who was a veteran, a Navy veteran, and a very accomplished